Reproduction. It is the process by which plants and animals give rise to their offsprings. Here, the topic is the female reproductive system and fertilization in human beings. The female reproductive system. The main parts of female reproductive system are ovary, fallopian tube or oviduct, uterus, endometrium, and vagina. These parts are clearly labeled in the given picture. The first and the most important part of the female reproductive system is ovary. They are found in pairs on either side of the uterus and it is situated in the abdominal cavity. And the function of ovary is to produce ovum and the female sex hormones. The main female sex hormones produced by ovary are estrogen and progesterone, and it plays vital role in the reproductive cycle and also keeping the homeostasis. The female gamete is called the ovum, and this female gamete is usually larger than a sperm and it is non-motile. It has specialized protective layers outside its cell membrane. Ovulation. It is the process of releasing mature ovum from the ovary. Normally, one ovum matures per month. The release of mature ovum alternates in each month in each ovary. The ovulation takes place in the 12th to 15th day of a menstrual cycle, and the shedding of the muscular layer and the blood vessels inside the uterus is known as the menstruation.
The reproductive cycle begins with ovulation, the release of a ripe egg or ovum from the ovary. Hundreds of thousands of follicles sit nestled inside the ovary. Each follicle is a sphere of cells with an immature egg at its center. The typical 28-day menstrual cycle begins on the first day of menstrual bleeding. During the first 7 days of the cycle, a few follicles start to grow. These maturing follicles secrete estrogen hormone into the bloodstream to prepare the lining of the uterus for pregnancy. Around day 7, all of the follicles stop growing and begin to degenerate, except for one. This dominant follicle continues to grow, nourishing the developing egg inside it. Around day 12, the follicle secretes a surge of estrogen into the bloodstream. When the estrogen reaches the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland in the brain, the anterior or front part of the pituitary gland floods the bloodstream with luteinizing hormone. Around day 14, luteinizing hormone causes the follicle to undergo a sudden growth spurt. Right before ovulation, the egg detaches from the inside of the follicle. The bulging follicle releases chemicals, signaling one of the two fallopian tubes to move in closer and envelop the follicle. The follicle swells until it bursts open, ejecting the ovum and fluid from the follicle into the abdominal cavity. In response, the fimbriae, tiny finger-like projections at the end of the fallopian tube, sweep across the ovulation site and pick up the ovum. Microscopic cilia on the fimbrial surface guide the ovum to the entrance of the fallopian tube. Muscular contractions along the wall of the fallopian tube gently propel the ovum toward the uterus. The ovum lives for 12 to 24 hours, the interval where fertilization can occur. If not fertilized, the ovum will disintegrate and be shed along with the uterine lining during menstruation, marking the end of one reproductive cycle and the beginning of another.
It is clear in the video that there are several follicles inside the ovary, and in each month a particular follicle dominates and nourishes to grow, and from this follicle the mature ovum is released, and this release of mature ovum is called ovulation. And the process called menstruation takes place when the egg released or the ovum released from the ovary reaches the uterus and the fertilization did not take place. The next important part of female reproductive system is the fallopian tube. It is also known as the oviduct. As seen in the video, it carries the ovum to the uterus, and it is the place for the fertilization. Next is uterus. It is a muscular sac-like structure. It is the place where the fetus completes its growth. The wall of uterus contains several layers, and these layers helps the fetus to grow well, and also the innermost layer is nourished with many blood vessels, and these blood vessels are shed off during menstruation when the fertilization did not take place. Endometrium. It is the most inner layer of uterine wall. It is to this wall the fetus adheres and grows, and it is supplied with several blood vessels. Vagina. It is the part through which uterus opens out. The sperms, which is the male gamete, are deposited here. Fertilization. The ovum from the ovary and the sperm deposited in the vagina reaches the oviduct, and then they fuses together to form the zygote. This process is called fertilization. Even though many sperms reach the oviduct, only one sperm fuses with the ovum. The single-celled zygote undergoes division to become a multicellular embryo. Embryo develops by attaching itself to the endometrium, which is the inner lining of the uterus. So, in a short, we can say that sperm plus egg gives zygote. Zygote undergoes division, gives embryo, and embryo on further more divisions gives us and develops into the fetus, and thus the development of fetus completes with a 40 weeks and the baby borns.
The journey of life starts with a fascinating race. Starting with millions of sperm, only one, the fastest and the strongest, will reach the finish line. Some fall out of the race, getting lost in the rush through the narrow fallopian tubes, while some are stopped by natural obstacles which protect the woman's body from intruders. Those who make it closer to the end compete fiercely with each other. Together, they attack the egg cell. Their only goal is to be the first one to enter the egg. Only one will make it through, but the others simplify this mission by slowly dissolving the membrane of the egg. Finally, we have a winner. The winning sperm enters the egg and conception occurs. Half the man's and half the woman's chromosomes combine. This creates a unique DNA code which is needed to create new life. These combined chromosomes form the first cell of the new baby. This is now called the zygote. the zygote starts to divide into a cluster of cells and begins to travel to the friendly and safe habitat of the uterus. When the zygote has divided into a bubble of cells, a blastocyst is formed with an inner layer of cells making up the embryo and an outer layer which will protect and nourish the embryo. The blastocyst then finds a comfortable place to stay in the uterus for the next 40 weeks to develop and transform into a human being.
As we said earlier, several mini sperms reach the egg inside the fallopian tube, but only one sperm, which is the most potent and energetic sperm, fuses with the egg. After the fertilization, the zygote undergoes division and forms the embryo. This embryo, simultaneously with the divisions, moves forward to the uterus and attaches in the endometrial lining. And thus, it grows and develops to the mature baby. As we sum up today's points, we discussed the topic the female reproductive system and the fertilization in human beings. The main parts of female reproductive system are ovary, fallopian tube or oviduct, uterus, endometrium and vagina. The female gamete is called the ovum, and the process of release of mature ovum from the ovary is called the ovulation. Fertilization is the process of fusion of ovum with the sperm in the oviduct, and only one sperm fuses with the egg. Thank you.